listening to the NFL Draft Bible Podcast Network, part of Sports Illustrated, giving you daily NFL Draft, Dynasty, and Devy Fantasy Football podcasts.
Welcome into the draft seminar. Class is in session. This is the draft seminar presented by Sports Illustrated's NFL Draft Bible Podcast Network. And I'm your host, Matt Hicks, the FF Educator, joined as always by my co-host, John Lobb, the Gridiron Scholar. And John, on this episode, we're going to be talking for more than 9 minutes because we have finished our player profiles. There's 50 of them this year, 50 individual player profiles. So in our last pre-draft show, me and John are going to go through our consensus final pre-draft fantasy football rankings, 10 quarterbacks, 20 running backs, 20 wide receivers, and 10 tight ends. John, I'm so excited for this. It's just we've been building to this moment. The draft editor's note, we're recording here on Thursday, so the draft is a week away. You may be listening to this sooner, so hopefully no breaking news happens. But I'm excited to dig into these rankings. How about you?
I am also, my friend, and I was thinking about the journey today. It's been about 6 months of hardcore tape analysis, research. We have 500 minutes of videos for everyone who goes the Rookie Big Board channel, 50 different prospects. I know you watched a ton more tape than just the 50. I counted it. I watched about 92 prospects by the end and countless hours of research. So it's all comes down to today's show, Matt. We are giving all of our viewers the consensus top 10. What we did is Matt and I each compiled our top 10 running backs or our top 10 quarterbacks and tight ends, compiled our top 20 receivers and top 20 running backs, and then we told them for a Rookie Big Board top rankings for all of you, and we're here to share with you.
All right. Well, John, I'm excited to jump into it. I would be remiss to not point out that if you want to go deeper, I have 102 film evals and 169 players ranked out. And if you want to dig deeper, it's patreon.com/theFFeducator. And I'm calling it a year-round rookie guide because it's getting updated every day, even after the draft. And John, it won't be too long till we're building our 2022 boards. But let's go ahead and let's jump into the quarterback discussion. And we're going to work our way backwards here. And John, for the quarterback position, we're going to start here with number 10. And it's going to be Davis Mills coming out of Stanford. Somebody who is looking at probably day 2 NFL draft capital, but a lot of question marks still on his film.
Yeah, I have a lot of questions. The first one, Matt, is the number of games played, or should I say lack of games played. Everyone who listens to me, it is really important to me the amount of games that a quarterback is able to suit up, start, study the opponent, do all of the pregame necessary things that make a quarterback successful in the NFL level. He's only started 13 games at Stanford. And when I delve into the numbers, they're okay. There's nothing, my model doesn't like him. It doesn't say he's awful. He is 6'4", 217. And I believe he was a 5-star prospect coming out, highly rated for the young man, and unfortunately for the Stanford Cardinal, he just never put it all together. Now, Matt, I've heard rumors that he might go in day 2 of the draft. If that is true, there's a lot of draft capital there. I don't have him graded that highly, so let's see where he lands next week.
All right, John, this next group of guys here, I get asked the question a lot. Is anybody outside of the big 5 quarterbacks worth taking a shot on? And my answer is pick the guy you like out of this next group, and you use a 3rd or 4th round Superflex rookie pick, no more. Reading backwards here, John, number 9 consensus for us is Sam Ehlinger out of Texas. Number 8 is Jamie Newman out of Wake Forest. Number 7 is Kellen Mond out of Texas A&M. And number 6 is Kyle Trask out of Florida. And John, I mentioned earlier, we have done full player profiles on all of these quarterbacks if you want to dig a little bit deeper. But who's one guy out of this group, John? If you're drafting in the 3rd round, and I tell you, you got to use the 306 in your rookie draft on one of these guys without knowing their landing spot, who's worth rolling the dice on?
I'm going to go athletic ability. And at this point, from what I hear, it would be Kellen Mond. Even though I am not a fan, there are lots of draft experts who I respect who have him graded much higher than you and I do and much higher than I do. But I do see athletic ability. Just the inconsistency drove me so crazy on the tape. And we have 47 games of him playing for the Aggies. So I feel really good that I know what type of prospect Kellen Mond is. And I've heard that he might also go in the 2nd round. So I think if one of these 5 quarterbacks, Matt, if one of them gets plucked or 2 of them in the 2nd round, then in the 3rd round of Superflex, you have to consider the prospect. But I don't have grades of 2nd round NFL prospect.
Yeah, the highest guy, out of this grading range on the rookie big board is Jamie Newman. I have him just slightly higher than Kellen Mond, and it's pure upside. He is a good design rusher. He's got a big arm. So, again, that's what you should be aiming for. I think, Kellen Mond, Jamie Newman are both worth the upside picks, but I would not use my upside picks on pocket passers or guys that don't have mobility because it limits fantasy football potential. So I'd keep that in mind here. John, I think for most folks, it's the big 4 quarterbacks and then Mac Jones kind of just hanging out by himself. And I think that's probably a fair assessment here on our board as well. I personally wouldn't take Mac Jones earlier than the mid-2nd round, even with 1st round draft capital, even in a Superflex league. That's still the way he grades out on my rookie big board rankings. And you also have him at number 5. Do you want to touch on that briefly here before we jump into our top 4, which is, I think, the meat and potatoes that people want to talk about with the quarterback class?
Mac Jones is likely to be the 3rd pick in the draft, but from a fantasy perspective, he clearly has limited upside because of his lack of production rushing the football. If you got lucky with 50 yards rushing, 75 yards rushing at the end of the year and 1 or 2 touchdowns, I think you would be happy for the little bonus. He's not going to get you a lot there. But I do see the Kirk Cousins ceiling, so I get it. I'm a little more bullish on Mac Jones. I'm all right with if he goes to San Fran and you're in a Superflex league, I'm all right with the 1st round draft pick on Mac Jones. But you do have to understand you have limited ceiling with the Alabama star right there.
All right, John, so no surprise here at the top for us. Number 1 is Trevor Lawrence. That's a pretty consensus take across the board. And this is where things are going to start to get a little bit different here. So in order, we have consensus here. Justin Fields as 2, Zach Wilson as 3, and Trey Lance as 4. But, John, we don't necessarily agree with the order of those players, so the consensus rankings really coming into play here. Talk to me about how you rank those 3 players on their own and what differentiates them for you.
I have right now, my board would be Trevor Lawrence. I have now moved Justin Fields 2nd because of the rushing upside. I do like Zach Wilson very much. But when I've looked into it more and I see the rushing yards and the ability of Justin Fields to gain, he could easily have an 800-yard rushing season with 8 to 10 touchdowns on the ground, Matt. I just couldn't any longer. Within the last week, I moved them up to number 2 because the ceiling is higher for Justin Fields than it is for Zach Wilson. So I decided to move him up within the last week because I really think he's so dynamic. I went back, watched more film, and I think Zach Wilson has sneaky running ability. People don't talk about it enough, but I do understand that. I don't think Zach Wilson can have 800 yards rushing. That's not within his realm of outcomes. That is with Justin Fields. So I just moved Fields up. That's why, the consensus board is similar to me here on what we have. I'm very bullish on Zach Wilson. I see the ceiling. I'm totally pumped on him. As long as the Jets can put good personnel and create a scheme that takes advantage of his skill set. And Trey Lance is the ultimate wild card. Do you have to wait a year to put him on the field? Is your roster constructed where you can wait a year? I think that's a big, big challenge with Trey Lance in your Superflex league. If he lands in Atlanta, let's just say he gets there, Matt, and he's going to sit for a year. Can your Superflex league, can you have him essentially on the bench? If you need him to start, that's going to be a big challenge to grab Trey Lance. You can't put him in your lineup if he's on the bench, my friend.
All right. So reading it backwards here again, Davis Mills 10, Sam Ehlinger 9, Jamie Newman 8, Kellen Mond 7, Kyle Trask 6, Mac Jones 5, Trey Lance 4, Zach Wilson 3, Justin Fields 2, and Trevor Lawrence is 1. And our final pre-draft fantasy football quarterback rankings. John, here is the main dish, all right? I mean, the quarterback's a nice little appetizer, and wide receivers, I think, are going to be a real good dessert for us. But this is, what folks, just looking at our engagement here with all these episodes we've done, folks want to know about the running backs. And we got 20 to talk about here. So, John, I'm going to start with our bottom 5 here. We're going to start with Chris Evans out of Michigan. That is our consensus. 20. Spencer Brown, 19, out of the University of Alabama, Birmingham, who is producing multiple draft prospects this year. We're going to talk about a couple more of them. Puka Williams, 18, out of Kansas. Larry Roundtree, 17, out of Mizzou. And Deion Jackson, number 16, out of Duke. John, out of this group of 5 guys here, we're probably looking at 4th-round rookie draft picks on them. Which one of these guys stands out to you as somebody that you'd be targeting for your rosters?
Matt, you said it perfectly. They're all 4th-round flyer draft picks. And when I'm in that round, I'm going to bet on athletic ability. And the one player that pops up in my model athletically, Deion Jackson out of Duke.
Oh, you stole my guy.
Saw the numbers that he came out with at his pro day, a 4.41 in the 40, 4.37 in the short shuttle. 7.15 in the 3-cone drill isn't great, but that's okay. When you combine the short shuttle and the 3-cone, I'm impressed. Now, I will say this. Having watched Deion Jackson, I had him as a sleeper in college fantasy football. I did not know he was 218, Matt. Mm-hmm. He's actually in this class. When you look at this group of running backs, he's one of the bigger backs. I wish Jamar Jefferson was 218. I mean, Deion Jackson ended up to have the size that I hope that Jamar Jefferson had. And I put it into context. David Cutcliffe's system for the Blue Devils, they are a passing-oriented game. They do not funnel any real amount of touches through the running back. I was kind of wondering in the last 2 weeks if Deion Jackson had gone to a school, Matt, in which he had been highlighted and had earned more touches. We might be looking at a different prospect here. You got to watch Duke's offense. It is a dynamic passing game, and David Cutcliffe does not use his running backs as much as other coaches. They also rotated backs there. So I'm going to bet on upside with Deion Jackson because of athletic ability.
Yeah, I'm a big Deion Jackson fan. I saw the pro day information, so I went and I watched some tape, and there's some great examples of explosion and big playability, especially for his size. And, John, we play in a lot of Devy leagues, a lot of campus to Canton leagues, and they're deep. So Deion Jackson is a guy that I've actually been trading for just over the last couple of weeks. I mean, I'm not trading much. I'm trading, 3rd-round Devy picks or, low options here, but I think he's somebody who might go a little bit higher than we expect in the NFL draft, and he could be a really fun player. So I'm glad you brought up Deion Jackson. He was going to be the guy that jumped out for me as well. I'll give an endorsement of Larry Roundtree. We just did an entire profile on Larry Roundtree, but I think he has the ability to profile into a 3-down back, starting a running back by committee system. And if a player goes down when he gets that opportunity, I could see him taking advantage of it. John, a really good group of 5 coming up here next. And I know I'll call this the My Guys group, because I think depending on who's listening, you're going to hear a guy that you're probably excited about if you've been following along with us or just following along the draft in general the last few months. Coming in at 15 is Elijah Mitchell. Jarrett Patterson out of Buffalo, number 14. Ramondre Stevenson coming in at 13 out of Oklahoma. Demetric Felton, who we are designating as a running back for this exercise, coming in at 12. And Jamar Jefferson coming in at 11 out of Oregon State. So, John, I know you're a big fan of Jamar Jefferson. The pro day was not exactly what we wanted. Are we pivoting? Is he still who jumps out to you from this group?
Well, so this is a fascinating, because I'm a big Jamar Jefferson guy. Love the film, love the production, the early breakout age. Obviously, when I saw the pro day results, I was disappointed in the raw athletic ability. I still think he's a better football player than he is necessarily a pure athlete. So there is value in football players still. But what really bothered me, we mentioned it with Deion Jackson. Jamar Jefferson is much smaller than I thought. They listed him at 218 at Oregon State. I was hoping for 220. Maybe he could have packed on some weight, right? Worked out from the end of the Beavers season to the pro day. He came in at 206, Matt. A lot lighter than I thought it. Now, 206 doesn't knock him out of the NFL. He should be drafted probably day 3. But he does fall down my board. I think 11 is a fair spot on our combined rankings for sure. How I look at this column, if you have your guy, it is worth a 3rd-round draft pick. If it's your guy, especially if you've taken back-to-back wide receivers, or you took a quarterback and a wide receiver. So you're looking for a balanced draft. If you love one of these guys, go get him in the 3rd round. Otherwise, if whoever falls to the 4th round, Matt, I would really, really like the value. And the one player I'd like to talk about, because we did a lot of videos on we did a video on the first 4 prospects. I like Elijah Mitchell a lot. Excuse me, everyone. 6.2 yards per carry. Now, I love the Raging Cajuns. If you like college fantasy football, I absolutely love watching the Raging Cajuns running game. And Elijah Mitchell has been a great back at that Louisiana running game there. He averaged 1 year 22% of the team market share. What I like, he's sneaky. 49 career receptions. And his athletic ability was very good. 4.19 in the short shuttle, 6.94 in the 3-cone drill, 5'10", 201. Wish he had gone up to 210, 215, but I like him here. I think if you got him in the 4th round, it's a great value.
Absolutely. The guy, John, who jumps out for me is Demetric Felton. He's actually 22 on my big board right now, but his ADP is well into the 3rd round. But he's somebody, he played both running back and wide receiver at UCLA. We're hoping for that running back designation. But, I was just on a call last night doing a rookie draft prep call. And, they said, who do I look for in the 3rd and 4th round? And Demetric Felton was my answer. I'm looking for him in the 3rd and 4th round of almost every league. But, John, let's jump into the top 10 because we have some exciting running backs to talk about. And we're going to start here with number 10, Javian Hawkins out of Louisville. Number 9, Kylan Hill out of Mississippi State. Chuba Hubbard, oh, how the mighty have fallen. Number 8 out of Oklahoma State. Khalil Herbert, 7 out of Virginia Tech. And a rising player here over the last few months, Michael Carter out of UNC coming in at 6. John, we're starting to get into the territory where we might have to invest some legitimate, 2nd-round rookie draft capital on these guys, depending on how our drafts go. who out of this group is going to appeal to you the most?
I'm hoping that Kylan Hill falls into the third round of the draft. I'm a bias to SEC running backs. Anyone who's known me, I'm sorry, I've been around long enough. There are just so many quality running backs who come out of that conference. I'm going to go all the way back to George Rogers winning the Heisman at South Carolina, Herschel Walker. I just have a lifetime, Terrell Davis at Georgia, of watching SEC running backs be even better at the NFL level than you thought they were in college. So I'm all in on Kylan Hill. He showed us this year, and we have a video breakdown. Go check it out if you don't know enough about Kylan Hill. Matt and I both like him here. He's a pass catcher, and he's a very good running back. 5.6 yards to carry, folks, in the SEC. That's an impressive number. He had a 29% market share of the team scrimmage yards for the Bulldogs. As I said, 67 career receptions, Matt. A good athlete. His numbers don't jump off, but they definitely hit the benchmarks. They hit the level you're looking for in an NFL back. I would love to get Kylan Hill in the third round. I do believe if Chuba Hubbard drops there, he's a value also. I think you're going to get him possibly in the third round.
Yeah, it's interesting, John. The guy who, well, of course, I'm a big Javian Hawkins fan. So, that's the guy that I'd be targeting out of this group. But I've talked about that a ton. And one guy I want to talk about, I mentioned he's really rising up boards, is Michael Carter. It'll be interesting to see where he lands, of course. But, guys like Michael Carter and Khalil Herbert, who I like both of their tape films a lot. And they grade out well. I worry, John, that these are going to be guys who are probably complementary change of pace backs on NFL teams. And so they may end up being really good pro players who don't end up really being fantasy football relevant guys, barring an injury. So they're guys who I'm certainly willing to stash if they slide down the board, but I'm not going to prioritize them with high draft capital, at least until I see a clear path to significant production. But John, speaking of significant production, it is not the deepest running back class, but with our top 5 guys here, there is some serious talent and some serious fantasy football impact potential. And let's tease the top here a little bit, John, and we'll start here with 5 and Trey Sermon out of Ohio State and Kenny Gainwell coming in at 4 out of Memphis. John, both guys who I think we expect some day 2 NFL draft capital and have the potential to be starting running backs for their rosters.
Absolutely, my friend. Both of them should go off the board day 2. I think they're going to go off the board in the second round. I have second round grades on them. Kenneth Gainwell is more of your pass catcher and uber dynamic in the passing game, folks. Matt and I broke down and talked about his pass catching ability a ton. He can be an amazing pass catcher. Trey Sermon, I've grown to love him throughout this process even more, especially over the last 3 weeks. I keep thinking, man, what if he lands in Pittsburgh in the second round? He's a very interesting player. I like him a ton. I think he's a 3-down back in the right landing spot. He might jump up boards more than anyone in our dynasty drafts if he lands in one of those dynamic spots. The difference between Pittsburgh and New York would be astronomical for Trey Sermon. Where does he fall in the NFL draft? Pittsburgh, he's a darling. If he ends up in New York, people might run away from him. It'll be fascinating test of your dynasty skills if you're going to invest in Trey Sermon with the New York Jets.
Another guy that I've acquired on multiple rosters just in the last couple weeks, John, just trying to bet on the draft a little bit and get ahead of the curve. And so, if you're playing in deeper Campus to Canton or deeper Devy leagues like me and John, Sermon is going to be a guy who's rostered because he's a popular name. It might be worth testing the waters with your league mates to see if you could get ahead of the value a little bit and take a little bit of a gamble. All right, John. Coming in at the top 3 here, it might not surprise you that I think we went a little chalky because we've been watching 2 of these guys tear up the college football scene for multiple years now. But coming in at number 3 is the newer guy to the block. It's Javonte Williams out of UNC. Coming in at 2 is Travis Etienne, and no surprise to anybody that listens to us, it's going to be Najee Harris as the running back 1 pretty easily here in our rankings. So, John, I think Javonte Williams is the most debated guy out of this top 3 group at this point, but who stands out to you, and how much of a priority is getting these guys, any of them, on your roster?
I'm an absolute huge fan of Javonte Williams. I've been drafting him in all the mock drafts that I've had, somewheres between 8 and 11. I think he fell to me once in a rookie mock draft at number 11. I'm very comfortable at number 8 grabbing him. Now, these are super flex, so obviously there's some value coming down the board because the quarterbacks are pushed up this year. But, man, I just mocked him with the Buffalo Bills, and then I put Travis Etienne with the New York Jets in the second round. So I think these 2 young men, where their landing spots are going to be, are going to dictate so much. I like both of them a ton. But what if Travis Etienne ends up in Buffalo and Javonte Williams ends up in the New York Jets? I'm not trying to beat up on the Jets here, but let's all be realistic. They are drafting second overall in the draft with the rookie quarterback most likely. I'd much rather prefer my running back with Josh Allen, my friends.
All right, John. Well, we got some wide receivers to talk about, and the strength of the wide receivers is definitely in the depth of this class because we're going to go 20 deep. If I go down the big board here, my personal big board, I'm going 25 deep, and there's still guys I think have a legitimate shot at being fantasy football relevant. But let's go ahead here and start with our number 20. That's Dez Fitzpatrick, followed by Cade Johnson. Dez Fitzpatrick out of Louisville, Cade Johnson out of South Dakota State. FCS, Jax. 18 is Anthony Schwartz out of Auburn. 17 is Frank Darby out of Arizona State. And 16 is Seth Williams, wide receiver, also out of Auburn. So, John, I know who I like out of this group. Who jumps out to you as a guy that you would prioritize in the late rounds of your fantasy football draft?
I was actually surprised he made it into the top 20. It's Dez Fitzpatrick. And I know I had him a little higher, which rose him up our rankings. And it was very close from him to the 21st. But when I talk about X receivers, I think there is 4 in this draft that we are really looking at. And Dez Fitzpatrick is the one no one's talking about. Matt, in my model, 154 career receptions. Now, I know it was in 4 years, so I understand that. Average 16.8 yards per catch. That's really solid, my friends. He had a 31% aerial dominator rating his last year on campus. And then his athletic ability, he had a 4.45 in the 40, 4.26 in the short shuttle, 7.09 in the 3-cone, but he's 6'2", 208 pounds. And you know what really popped? I'm watching the Tutu Atwell film. And you know what? I ended up liking Dez Fitzpatrick more than Tutu Atwell. And then when Tutu Atwell, what did he grade out? 155 or something? Done. Like, I was low on Tutu at 160. When he ended up less than 160, I'm like, I'm out. I like Dez Fitzpatrick. Matt, let's see where he ends up at draft capital. But he's going to cost you nothing in Dynasty. Do you have an AD? Is he even on top? Is he in the top 60 of ADP by any chance? Because I got a feeling he's dirt cheap in early drafts right now.
So in NFL Draft Bible ADP, he is registering round 6, pick 7. So we are in the hundredths at that point. What's 6 times 12? Late 80s.
I love the upside as an X receiver because I think a team will identify him as a 5th-round target as an X receiver. So I like him. He's my guy. I'm looking to see where he lands.
All right. Well, John, I'm going to go into process a little bit here with the guy that I want to highlight here. And I'm a big Cade Johnson fan, but let me go into the process behind this. Any wide receiver that goes on day 3, especially if they're going closer to round 6 or 7, they need a clear path to actually making their team. Because a team very well may draft a rookie wide receiver, sign some undrafted free agent wide receivers, and there could be 8, 9, 10 wide receivers going into camp, and these guys have to find a way to contribute right away. And so what I look for in my wide receivers are guys that can contribute on special teams, because that means they're going to have a roster spot. And Cade Johnson was a fantastic returner, and there's going to be some teams out there that would want to draft him specifically as a returner. Think about a team like Chicago, John, who just lost Cordero Patterson. They could absolutely take on Cade Johnson as a return guy, and then over the course of the next 2 to 3 years, he earns his spot as a wide receiver 3, or maybe even earlier if we go with that Chicago example, maybe they move on from Anthony Miller. That's a rumor that's been going out there. And all of a sudden, Cade Johnson has gone from a 6th-round pick to a viable slot receiver in the NFL. And we have a full video breakdown on Cade Johnson, so I won't get too much into his game. But process-wise, when you're taking these late-round draft picks, look for a path to staying on the roster to start. Then they could sit on your taxi squad until they earn some significant volume on their NFL roster. Moving on here, John, we have a really explosive group of wide receivers here coming in 15 through 11. And legitimately, I'm not just hyping this up. All of these guys are exciting to me. Coming in at 15 is Tamorrion Terry out of Florida State, Dwayne Eskridge out of Western Michigan, Nico Collins out of Michigan, Amari Rogers out of Clemson, and Dyami Brown out of the University of North Carolina. John, I might as well just tee up a Nico Collins pitch for you, because I'm pretty sure that's who you're going to want to talk about.
I do want to talk about Nico Collins. But before I go on to about Nico Collins, Matt said something very important. All of our viewers right now, Matt's Patreon page is incredible. We've given you the top 20 here. Go follow him on Twitter, and he has links to his Patreon page, and Matt's got at least 50 receivers. So you can go much deeper than the top 20 we're doing here. And if you even go to my Twitter account, you can find my link. I have 44 wide receivers. So we have you covered, but just for the purpose of our show today, we just did the top 20. And let me wax poetically about Nico Collins again. First, remember, he was chained to the bottom of the field by Jim Harbaugh and that Michigan offense. You cannot look at the production numbers to judge Nico Collins. Now, one production number stands out, folks. 17.8 yards per catch. That's an amazing number. If you watch Michigan, that's even a bigger surprise because Shea Patterson was throwing the football to Nico Collins. But you're looking for an X receiver in this draft. 6'4", 215. And the athletic ability is off the charts. I'm hoping that Nico Collins falls to me in the 3rd round. That'd be a dream in the Dynasty draft. I might have to pluck him in the 2nd round, depending on how these drafts are going and in his landing spot. But I like Nico Collins a ton. And my personal favorite, I have really enjoyed Dyami Brown over the last 2 years. Very underrated prospect in my book. If he falls to you late in the 3rd round, my friends, go get him. Back-to-back 1,000-yard seasons for North Carolina.
All right, lots of guys to be excited about here in this group, and we're going to continue on here. Our top 10, John, starts with Kadarius Toney out of Florida. Amon-Ra St. Brown out of USC is 9. Number 8 is Tylan Wallace out of Oklahoma State. John, we got a pair of Moores coming in next. Number 7 is Rondale Moore, and 6 is Elijah Moore. So who jumps out to you, John, from this group in terms of, I think we have a good set of NFL wide receivers here, and they're going to be able to be deployed in a variety of ways. But if we're thinking value, John, guys who could be sitting on the board, who jumps out to you from this group of 5?
So we have breakdowns of all 5 of these wide receivers. Go to the Rookie Big Board channel. Check them all out. But you know, it's funny. Matt hasn't Tylan Wallace fallen off the Dynasty radar? Like, I don't see anything about him on Twitter. I don't hear him in the national media anymore. I mean, I really feel like he's become the invisible man of the 2021 draft class. I actually think he might be the value of all of these wide receivers remaining. He might fall to you late third round. I have a feeling there is zero buzz around Tylan Wallace right now in the Dynasty community. And Matt, I've been thinking a lot about this. Kadarius Toney. I'm not reaching for him. I don't have a first-round grade. If he gets first-round draft capital, I'm going to say this, Matt. The Dynasty community on Twitter is so down on Kadarius Toney. The irony here, you might get a value on Kadarius Toney late second, early third. I mean, it is so negative in the Twitter universe that you might end up with value with Kadarius Toney. I mean, you go online and you would think Kadarius Toney is the absolute worst wide receiver prospect. But when you watch the national television and you watch all the media, the main media, they love him, and he's probably still a first round. We'll see. We'll see. But first round draft capital, very interesting prospect. And you know what I'm most impressed about, Matt? Elijah Moore seems to have jumped Rondell Moore in the Dynasty community. My value and all my early shares of Elijah Moore are gone. I was so into him in January, February, early March, but the Dynasty community caught up to us. Now Elijah Moore is not going to go later than Rondell Moore anymore.
Now we pivot and chase the value to Tylan Wallace. I'm a huge Tylan Wallace fan. He's number 5 for me right now as a wide receiver in this class. I think he's really going to stand out. And one guy that you know, I do have a tough time ranking him above some of the other wide receivers pre-draft in this class, but somebody who has the potential to move up the most, John, is going to be Amon-Ra St. Brown, because he can be deployed in a variety of ways. He can play big slot. He can be used along the boundary. And depending on the offense that he finds himself in, he could end up being a really exciting player. I just did a mock draft video with landing spots. We did a rookie mock draft off of it. And in that, for the rookie big board, and in that, I had Amon-Ra St. Brown going to the Chiefs at the end of the third round, which I think is realistic. And if he does that, then all of a sudden he is a really fantasy relevant, potentially, sliding in there at the 5 spot, top 5 wide receiver. So just somebody to keep an eye on here as we head into the NFL draft. And John, let's get to the star of the show here, the top 5 wide receivers. And I'll go ahead and preface this by saying there is not a lot of consensus between me and John with ranking these top 5. So this is really a reflection of some healthy disagreement here at the top. But we'll start here, John, with 5 and 4. Coming in at number 5 is Terrace Marshall out of LSU. And coming in at 4 is Rashad Bateman. And I am sure that you have Rashad Bateman a lot higher than me because I do not have him ranked in my top 5. So I'm guessing I'm pulling down his ranking a little bit.
Yeah, I am at number 2. I am in love. I got a little man crush on Rashad Bateman. I've been on him since last summer, Matt, and I'm not going to waver. I love the film. And basically what you just said about Amon-Ra St. Brown, and I like Amon-Ra St. Brown a lot. I'm on to him too. Landing spot. If he landed with the Chiefs, oh, man, that would be delicious for Dynasty. Rashad Bateman. I've been on him the whole time. He's done nothing to me that moves him off number 2. Yes, would I have loved him to be 210 like he was on the Minnesota website? Sure. But does he play bigger than 190? Absolutely. Matt says no. I also, what you said about Amon-Ra St. Brown, though, what I like a lot, what sold me on him was he can be employed at all 3 positions. You can play him in as the big receiver in the slot. You could put him on the X if you have to, and he can play Z. I also like his diversity in routes run for the Golden Gophers. I like Rashad Bateman a lot. Last year, pre-draft, I was into T. Higgins. I like him. I always liked Tyler Boyd. I think he's a very similar prospect. Don't think he'll have the A.J. Green, Julio Jones ceiling. I don't think he'll be a 1,500-yard receiver, but I see a very consistent 950 to 1,200-yard receiver at the NFL level. I like Rashad Bateman a lot. And Matt, we got such depressing news about your boy, Terrace Marshall, yesterday. I want to hear what you say about Mr. Marshall, because I like him too now, but that was not good news from Indianapolis.
Potentially, yeah. So, with Rashad Bateman, he's a guy that you're going to want to see go to a high-volume situation, right? So, like what I've kind of said is Bateman's ideal landing spot in a realistic sense is Detroit at 41, because they need wide receivers. They need somebody to fill into that X-type role, and you could have Rashad Perriman, taking the top off of the defense and leaving some room underneath for Rashad Bateman. So if he lands in Detroit at 41, I'm back in, and I'm interested in him. But I think he's going to go later in the draft than folks necessarily think. Now, with Terrace Marshall, what John's referring to is there were reports that at the medical combine, which did still happen, players still went to Indianapolis and went through the medical portion of the combine this year. So it's interesting because they just said that, his injury history popped up on the radar of doctors, but there were no new injuries or undiscovered injuries. They were just referring back to he had a lower body injury in high school, his senior year, and then he had another lower body injury in 2019 for LSU, which is one of the reasons that folks don't know as much about him. Because he didn't finish the season with that Joe Burrow team that, Chase and Jefferson finished the season with. And during that season, Terrace Marshall was on pace to produce Justin Jefferson. But all that being aside, and it's a really good point to bring up here, and, we're talking pre-draft context. One of the things that I talk about a lot is we have to listen to the NFL. They have more information in some areas, especially when it comes to medical history. So I think Terrace Marshall is a first-round pick. I do. I think talent-wise, he's a first-round selection. I thought he could have, realistically, his range of outcomes was a top 50 pick. Before hearing this news, I'm saying there's no way he falls outside of the top 50. Now, if Terrace Marshall falls, outside of the top 50 at this point, then the medical concerns are legitimate. If he goes, in the first round, then I'm not worried about it. That means the NFL is not worried about it. So we're going to have to wait and see. But at this point, Terrace Marshall is still my wide receiver 3. He wins in the deep third of the field. He is a unique receiver in this year's draft class in the sense that he has height. He can win along the boundary, but he also has the ability to play inside. And so that versatility along with the height makes him unique compared to, although we have a lot of talented guys in this year's draft class, they're either 170 pounds or they're 5'8", 5'10". So I think Terrace Marshall is going to quite literally stand out amongst his peers. But John, let's get into our top 3 wide receivers here. We have coming in at 3, Jalen Waddle out of Alabama. Coming in at 2, Devonta Smith out of Alabama. And coming in at 1, it's Jamar Chase out of LSU. So we definitely have some disagreement here. I actually have Jalen Waddle at 2 and Devonta Smith at 4, which means you must be much higher on Devonta Smith than me.
I have Devonta Smith at 3, but I have Jalen Waddle at 5. So I think that's where the difference in the scoring came about. But Devonta Smith did come in at 166. We joked about him. We knew when he didn't want to get weighed that he was probably less than 170.
Yeah, we did say that. Yep.
We talked about it a couple times, Matt and I, on a couple of podcasts. Look, there's no question about his route running. There's no question about his toughness. There's no question about his hands. He's a brilliant prospect. The only question is ultimately, can his frame withstand the rigors and the physicality at the NFL level? And we just don't have a lot of models that show it. And Matt, I was doing my mock draft the other day, and I'm starting to think that Devonta Smith might be the faller. We're going to see Because if you look out in the top 15, only 2 teams need receivers, Miami and the Lions. And if they don't take Devonta Smith, there's going to be a fall, I believe, of this young man. I don't think people are really looking. Look at the draft board, everyone. Once you get outside of Miami and Detroit, not unless the Eagles, and can the Eagles actually draft a 166-pound wide receiver after they failed so often? I mean, I'd be shocked if they did that, but it's possible, I guess. I wonder if he's going to fall a little bit. All 3 of them are amazing prospects. Just depends where they're going to land. And I'll say this, I just noticed this, Matt. 5 of our 6 are from the SEC. How unbelievable. Ladies and gentlemen, if you are not watching the SEC every Saturday and scouting for your Devy leagues, your Dynasty leagues, your fantasy leagues, you're just doing it wrong. The amount of talent in the SEC is just unbelievable, everyone. And I love all the conferences. I mean, I watch all of it. But I just realized 5 of our top 6 are from the same conference in college football. Waddle, to me, is kind of the X factor. I am worried about the injuries, and his best season was in the rearview mirror, 2018, very similar to Rondell Moore. That I am a little concerned about his ability to stay healthy. I have no question about his skill set, but he has not shown me that he can stay on the field for an entire season since he was a freshman. So that's why he drops on my board a little bit. But I do obviously love his home run ability.
Yeah, I'm a big Jalen Waddle fan. I love his athleticism that goes along with his speed. I think he has fantastic hands. I think he's a better contested catch guy than a lot of the guys that we've talked about here today, despite the fact that he does not come with the size that the other wide receivers do. So I'm really excited. John, my ideal landing spot for Jalen Waddle, and I've said this a ton, is I hope he lands at 13 with the Los Angeles Chargers, pairing him up with Justin Herbert, especially with Mike Williams and Keenan Allen there. I mean, gosh, Jamar Chase is the wide receiver 1. That can't change, but my goodness, Jalen Waddle with the Chargers would make me think about it. It really would. But, John, we have one position group left. It is the tight ends. Hey, listen, there is some fantasy value in the tight end position, all right? It's worth talking about. Now, these first 5 guys, maybe not as much as the next 5 guys, but these guys are probably going to be almost free in your rookie drafts. So let's go ahead and start here, John. Number 10 is Kylan Granson out of SMU. Zach Davidson here is coming in at 9. Noah Gray out of Duke here coming in at 8. Trey McKitty out of Georgia coming in at 7. And a sneaky guy, John, a sneaky guy. He's going to come in with higher draft capital than a lot of folks expect. It's Tommy Tremble out of Notre Dame. John, I'm just throwing this out there. Do not be surprised if Tommy Tremble is a second-round NFL draft pick, because that's what I'm hearing. But who?
Man, I think he's going to be a second-round NFL draft pick. If this wasn't fantasy, and we are ranking these for fantasy purposes, Tommy Tremble would be much higher up my board. But when I put him into my production model, and I just look, I can't rank him up any higher. Plus, he's a little undersized, 6'3", 241. He's not the biggest. He's not, Hunter Long's a big boy. Tommy Tremble is not. And I do think there's a little bit of that Notre Dame polish on the NFL draft media with Tommy Tremble. We've heard this about these Notre Dame. Definitely like the Notre Dame tight ends. I've been watching draft analysts for, 40 years. So he's getting a little bit of that shine of the Golden Dome. But I do like Tommy Tremble. And I agree, Matt. He's a second-round pick in the NFL. But the guy who surprised me, and I'm kind of thinking, what happened wrong with Duke? But part of it was the quarterback was bad. The quarterback was not good at Duke this year, folks. Noah Gray is a much better athlete than I expected, my friends. 40-yard shuttle, 4.52 and he's a legitimate tight end. That is smoking it, people. 4.30 in the 20-yard shuttle and a 6.72 in the 3-cone drill, Matt. We broke them down in our Senior Bowl preview. If you want to see a breakdown, Matt and I did about a 2 or 3 minute segment on Noah Gray in our Senior Bowl preview. When his pro day with Deion Jackson, when I saw those numbers, Matt, I was very impressed. He's 6'3", 240. He's a little bit of that Evan Ingram, right? The tweener level. He's an underrated pass catcher and route runner. If you're gambling in the 4th or 5th round, Noah Gray's a very interesting high upside pass catching tight end.
Yeah, and John, I'm not going to talk about one of these 5 guys. I'll just throw a name that very well may not end up with any relevancy, but he's a really fun player. Tony Poljan out of Virginia. I can't quit him, John. I can't get him out of my head. He's 80th on the rookie big board, so we dig deep, right? So he's probably not going to be fantasy relevant. But if he is, I said it. All right. Tony Poljan, he's 6'7", 235 pounds. He's athletic for his size. He's a good pass catcher. He could end up being a red zone type threat at the next level. And John, I learned last night that before transferring to Virginia, he played quarterback at Central Michigan. And my mind was blown. But let's go ahead and let's finish this thing off here, John, with the top 5 tight ends. To nobody's surprise, Kyle Pitts is our number 1. So we'll go ahead and get that suspense out of the way. But I'm working here from 5 up to 2. It's Kenny Yabo out of Ole Miss, Hunter Long out of Boston College. And then here's what's going to be the debate. Oh, it's so close for me. It's Brevin Jordan coming in at 3 here in our consensus ranks, and Pat Freiermuth coming in at 2. So, John, I think there's 2 big questions when looking at this group. The first one being, what differentiates Pat Freiermuth from Brevin Jordan? And the second one being, if you're going to take a late shot on either Hunter Long or Kenny Yabo, which one do you want?
The difference between Freiermuth and Brevin Jordan, in my book, is the blocking ability and health. Freiermuth has a higher blocking grade, which means more likely to get on the field and more likely to have opportunities in the passing game sooner rather than later. I will say this, Brevin Jordan has the higher ceiling because he can be a phenomenal pass catcher. However, I was also a little disappointed in Brevin Jordan's pro day. I thought he looked better of an athlete on film than he did in shorts. And I'm so disappointed we didn't get any times on Freiermuth. I just so badly wanted to see, especially those Penn State products. We know how they score out on these pro days. But Freiermuth 6'5", 258. That is one big boy, Matt. And size matters at the tight end, so I think he's going to play first. As far as Hunter Long and Kenny Yeboah, if you're a risk taker, you're looking for upside, it's Kenny Yeboah. He has the athleticism. He's 6'4", 250. He really showed me a lot going from Temple to Ole Miss. I was impressed. If you're looking for a player who's going to get on the field and be productive, will not be a fantasy star, but should be able to start, it's Hunter Long. And I am not going to be surprised if Hunter Long sneaks into the late 2nd round of the NFL or early 3rd round of the NFL draft. I think NFL teams are going to look at him at 6'5", 253, a good 2-way tight end, a little bit more of your classic, inline blocker. I think they're going to like Hunter Long. So if you want a nice security blanket, Hunter Long. If you're looking for the home run, Kenny Yeboah.
All right, there, and I think Kyle Pitts speaks for himself.
Oh yeah,
here. We don't have to go down that route. But he has a full player profile if you want to look into it, if you want to watch it or listen in. Hey, John, that is our final pre-draft fantasy football rankings. In total, we ranked what's that? 20 plus 20, 60 guys. I had to do the math here in my head. We ranked 60 different players here, but you gave a great mention earlier. You could go to John's Twitter at Gridiron SCHOL91 to get even more depth for this. You can go to my Patreon, patreon.com/theFFeducator, and get even more depth to the rankings that we gave. And John, of course, things are going to shake up after the NFL draft. So we will be back. We will be breaking down those post-draft landing spots, John. And then after that, we got some, we won't announce the plans yet, but we have some plans. Absolutely. We will not skip a week. All right. Because we are a year-round podcast. So we're going to get into the Devy world. We're going to get into the college fantasy football world. And then we're going to be going strong all the way through the NFL season too. So we won't give too many details yet, but don't worry. We aren't going anywhere. If you are watching, please make sure to give this video a like and subscribe. If you are listening, please make sure you're subscribed. And as always, we